Before the path hardens, before the choice is made, stopping decision death in this high stakes trade. Welcome to the AI Momentum Podcast. Today we are joined by Amir, a founder and product strategist who spent decades navigating the messy intersection of human intent and technical execution. Amir isn't just a newcomer playing with LLMs because from his early days at the heart of the Israeli tech ecosystem to his deep work in product strategy and his recent initiatives like the Think Big newsletter, Amir has consistently focused on one thing: the architecture of progress. Whether it's building custom LinkedIn extensions to manage high level networks or launching a suite of vibe coded apps like Castify, TempoHack, and GloryHack, Amir is operating at the absolute frontier of modern development. He is the living reality where the distance between thought and a shipped product has essentially vanished. But as we know on the show, when the cost of creation hits zero, the cost of a wrong decision can skyrocket. Amir, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Pavitra. And I really like the focus of your podcast, the angle of kind of building momentum, but in the right direction. So hopefully I can provide some insights to the listeners and viewers.
Today, we are going to be pulling back the curtains. We are going to be exploring the moments when building at wipe speed creates a new kind of pressure. What happens when the code is easy, but the commitment is hard? Amir, you built everything from deep tech sales tools to community driven newsletters. Take us back to that first moment where the vibe actually worked. The first time an AI tool handed you a piece of code that felt that's business. Did you feel the momentum and get all revved up to, get started? Or did you immediately start worrying about the debt you might be creating if you just went along with it?
I'll even take a step back before that because just to compare, like to demonstrate why did I feel that kind of difference. And in like a couple of iterations ago, I was director of products in two startups, right? That was like before my own company, before I worked at AWS. So I would say, I don't know, 8, 10 years ago, something like that. And I would work, we had a SaaS solution for learning technologies. And then I had a different startup where I did virtual and augmented reality. And I was always frustrated as a product leader because I was listening to customers, I was talking to them. We had some good ideas about how to improve the product. And then I would speak with engineering, and I had a great engineering team, but we would quickly realize that to turn this into value would take months, and to test this with customers even before we launched this in production, even that would take a long time. And that always kind of frustrated me because I really am obsessed with creating value for customers. And I am, if you could say by nature, I'm a bit biased for action, right? So when I understand the problem, when I have a strategy of where I want to go, I can quickly translate this to, okay, how should we get there? How can we test things and iterate and in an agile way? So that used to frustrate me quite a lot. Now, fast forward to today, right? 8, 10 years as we go, and when the generative AI came out, I started to realize that this is changing. And I'll start with a small example because when was the first moment? So you mentioned kind of my LinkedIn extension, right? Chrome extension. So I engage a lot on LinkedIn, and I try to read and share and be part of the discussion. But that takes a lot of time, a lot of investment, especially now if I want to engage in a language which is not my native tongue. So now I'm in Sweden and in Stockholm. I am learning the language, but I'm a bit behind, right? I mean, I'm not as a native speaker. And if I want to engage with the audiences that are relevant to me, it takes a lot of effort and time, and sometimes I don't have that. So either I need to give that up or I need to find a solution. So I think it was a year and a half ago or something like that. The idea came to me. I do a lot of commenting on LinkedIn just to really respect and reflect on some of the other people in my network and what they share. And I said, why don't I build myself like an LLM API based Chrome extension to help me with that, right? So I worked with, I believe it was a Cloud Code that I used at the time, and this was like the early days of Cloud Code, right? It's a year old or something like that. So um, I explained the problem that I had. I kind of told it, yeah, I want to build this Chrome extension. It will kick off whenever I'm in LinkedIn. And with some iteration, with some playing around, first of all, I was able to gradually understand what do I want this extension to do, because as I was building, I was realizing things. And because a Chrome extension is a pretty simple application, um, it actually built it quite easily. I was able to connect it to both OpenAI and Anthropic APIs. I was able to add some features like provide examples from my own voice of commenting and decide if the comment should be large, small, or medium, and always re- provide a draft of the comment in the language of the original post. So pretty nice set of features in a few days. Um, and by the way, it's worth mentioning, I'm not a software engineer myself, right? So I'm a product person. I can understand technology. I can understand software. I can understand structure. I can read some technical documentation. I wouldn't trust myself to build such a product, or it would take me days and weeks of learning and frustration. But this was the first time when I realized, hey, I can solve problems for myself. I can probably solve problems for others, because I was seeing, more, and I was engaging with all kinds of customers. So that was like, for me, that when the realization dropped for the first time, hey, I can ship much faster. I can provide value much faster.
Really liked when you said I can solve problems for myself. I can also solve problems for others, because I think a lot of times where we get stuck is people don't know what problems they have until it's presented to them, and either they have a problem with it or they don't. And that is where I keep struggling in my own mind, because I'm building stuff for myself to solve my own problems, and I have absolutely no clue whether people actually want it or not. But in a work environment, I thrived when I was solving problems for others. I got shit done. They were over the line, they were in the backlog. I got stakeholder alignment, everything sorted, and it was out the door. But when it comes to my own projects, I'm like, okay,
I think this is something that a skill that I think I picked up along the years, right? From being in product management things. So listening to people, and they talk about something specific, about a specific pain. But if you can elevate your point of view, okay, what is this kind of part of a more general problem? What is this, right? They're talking about this friction or that kind of frustration. And then, especially if you can ask some questions and get some more answers, and then you can elevate your point of view and say, hey, actually, what they're trying to do is this, right? This bigger thing. And maybe even when they're talking, sometimes they would even start with the solution. I have this solution in mind. If you can do this for me, I said, wait, let's not talk about the solution or about this, even the technology, AI. Can you explain a bit what you're trying to achieve? What is the problem? Where are you frustrated? What opportunities are you missing? And then let's abstract that to what, and imagine what an ideal situation and solution would look like. And only then think about, okay, let's build the first version of what good looks like.
I was actually building a fashion sustainability app. And for that, like, I put out a survey. I got over 200 people who filled it out. I went to cafes, spoke to people. Everybody has a problem with fashion. So, yes, I wanted to build something, but it was so big. And then trying to find a tech founder, this was probably a year ago, was turning out to be so hard. And I had to narrow it down so much that now, if I go even one step lower, it's not really what I want to build or
Mm.
achieve that will help people. But on the flip side, I want to start running, and I'm building a running app, but there are a million running apps out there. I don't know if people will want this. Tell me a little bit about that feeling of magic when Claude built you a working app in minutes, the first one.
Yeah, I mean, and it's been only accelerating. So I'll actually jump to yesterday, right? Yesterday, I was working with this social impact startup, and they're trying to help them build like a dashboard based on very complex data. And we wanted to create something that they could show their stakeholders, their 24 municipalities, private sectors, actors, citizen organizations, things like that involved. So it's a complex setting. And we thought the best way to to get them to commit was to show them something that was working. As a preparation on Saturday, I knew we were having this meeting. I told Claude Code, give me 5 completely different versions of this, right? So I could show the team and we could select the best, mix and match, right? And again, I just went, had my coffee, came back, maybe I gave a comment here or two, and I got 5 different versions. At the beginning of the meeting yesterday morning, I showed the team, hey, here's 5 versions, play around with them, take 20 minutes, make notes of which parts do you like most, right? And what would you like to keep? What would you like to change? What would you like to add? And then in the next hour, what we did, we collected the comments from the team. We said, hey, this is what we want to have. This should be the demo version. Within 15, 20 minutes, we had the working version. They were like, I could see their eyes open, their smiles on their faces. And to top it all off, I said, okay, this was on my local machine. And then I said, okay, I need to give you access, right? I told Claude, I need to give access to others. Can you set it up with GitHub and Vercel? And, that's the only one or two things that I told it. And actually, it went ahead and it deployed on GitHub. It deployed on Vercel. I just had to send them the link. That's it. I didn't even have to copy anything else. So that was this has been a step up since January this year, where we've seen kind of the models being more agentic, being more capable of understanding a more messy requirement and making that into something that is actually in production ready. So yeah, that's I have one of these almost every week now, another mind-blowing moment.
For your research, of course, you speak to real human beings, but do you also do your research with any AI tools?
Definitely. I mean, I have too many ideas. And as you said, you need to choose where do you invest your time and money and attention and messaging. So I definitely brainstorm with my AI friends. I'm using I build all kinds of skills to help me do the deep research. I sometimes compare between, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude, and get different perspectives. I operate deep research. I often use, at Amazon, one of the last role I did at Amazon was leading the innovation program. Innovate ideas based on customer needs, and you work backwards from that. So I taught my AI tools this methodology of how to work backwards from customer needs, how to do the research, how to bring evidence so I can make data-driven decisions. So definitely, I'm using AI tools to co-work with me. But in the end, I need to make the decision. I get it helps me a lot of the desktop research that I would need to do. In parallel, as you said, I must speak to people, actual humans, to get a sanity check. But then it's up to me as a product founder, designer, whatever you want to call it, make the decision. Okay, this is all the evidence. It tells me some directions, but in the end, I need to make a decision. And by the way, because it's easier now to almost create throwaway things. So the other mindset that I've now been accustomed to in I would say, last 6 to 8 months, I build different versions. I try them myself first, and then I get people to try them as well and give me feedback, tells me real evidence. Should I discard this? Should I double click? Should I pivot? So the whole cycle is being compressed.
You actually broached on my next question for you, which was, with so many ideas, how would you decide to move on from an experimental vibe coded prototype to a live tool?
First of all, as I said, it's like evidence from users, right? I see if they like it, if they don't like it, if they're excited about it. And that's you could say more the way that it used to be in the past, and it should be. And not everybody followed this, but now it's faster and easier. You don't need to do any static wireframes or clickable mockups. You actually build the almost production ready. Yes, maybe not all the security, not all the scaling is there, but the user experience you can build very quickly. So that's one way. And I would say the other way is you have to fall in love yourself with the experience and you have to see the potential. Even if it's not there, if it's a bit rough around the edges, you have to have a big vision of what problem this will solve and how will this change the world. And again, for me, it's already like a muscle that my brain is trained on because of working backwards and imagining jumping into the future, writing imaginary press releases from the future and things like that. That's for me, it's like a muscle that it's almost natural, jumps into action whenever I'm thinking about something. So I can, and I called my company Think Big Leaders. So I'm trying to think big when I'm just seeing the kernel of the idea of how is it changing the world for someone.
You had mentioned to me that
Yeah.
you use base 44 to handle the heavy lifting of the backends and deployment, while Claude handles the architecture. So we know that as builds get more complex, the speed of starting tends to become noise. Did you ever feel that having so many capabilities was making it harder to see the right or the correct next move, even though you're going backwards, you're building all of these skills?
It happens to me every day almost. So every day I have even if a customer or a user would tell me, hey, what if you could do this or do that? I've taught myself not to rush too quickly into building it, because then I know, work for everybody. It will add more complexity, or even, even if I could build it perfectly, maybe it will be too much on the screen for the user, and the user will lose focus. The application, the problem that I was trying to solve will be kind of diluted. So I've taught myself to think twice or three times before I go into a big new set of features. But when I do think it's worthwhile, then it's easier to move fast and test it, and then roll back if I discovered it was the wrong direction. So I take some time, a bit more time on the decision. I dive deep a bit into that. I kind of explore, again, sometimes with AI, arguing and being my devil's advocate and highlighting implications of such decisions. But then I'm able to move fast when a decision is made.
You're talking about the visual hierarchy. I think at the moment, a lot of these tools, everything is everywhere. It is really hard to focus and go like, okay, this is the most important part of the page. Just by making the text big, it's not the most important part of the page.
No.
So I think having that information and visual hierarchy for the user to breeze through the page in a priority level of what's more important, second importance, third importance, I think that's very, very important, and you're doing all of that.
Yeah, I'll mention one more thing that as you were speaking about user experience and, especially the visual elements, it will also kind of explain where are humans very useful to have as part of the loop. As I was kind of interacting with people and iterating and asking them on LinkedIn, if you'd like to use it, I've had two or three people who kind of really connected with the idea and then wanted to, and we met and we had a good conversation. And in two cases, they are like UX experts. And they were gracious enough to say, you know what, I want to try this application. With one of them, I really wanted her to do like even more in-depth things, so I even paid her like a fee to do like a real thorough UX sweep and record what she did and give me like lots of notes, which I could then use back again into Claude and say, hey, this is like a high level. I could transcribe what they were talking about. So Marianne was one. Marcin was another one, like really good UX experts. And the other advantage here is, me as the one who's built it, I kind of already don't see some of the things, right? Because I take them for granted. But for a first-time user, they see things very differently, and things that I thought to be obvious are not obvious. So I would also recommend people who can express how real users feel, have them just go through this and have them record it so you are like over their shoulders as users. And then it's very easy now to transcribe whatever they recorded, like a 20, 30 minutes walk through the application. And then again, I took Claude and said, okay, from these 30 minutes transcription, create for me a list of UX issues and cluster them into how we would fix them and things like that. So even that cycle of getting a human to try your application, individuals, but then do it at scale, and then aggregate all the feedback, that is very useful.
So when you're vibe coding with such powerful tools. Yeah, it's easy to keep adding agents because, well, now we can. How do you stop yourself from building another technical marvel, that would solve a problem that hasn't been validated yet? So it's just an idea, maybe a light bulb moment.
This comes back to maybe my experience in innovation of 25 years. Often, uh, a good product or a good innovation, especially in such a saturated, mature environment, digital products, things that we have, the value is created by not adding more features, is by actually taking features away. So there is one such innovation tool which is called Eliminate, where you look at what could we eliminate, what could we clean up. Even look at how Google search began, right? You had like just one, you had just like a search bar, that's it. And it was like a white page with a search bar. All the distractions are gone. Very different from Facebook or the other things that we have today, or TikTok, right? Very clean experience, very focused on the outcome that the user wants to achieve. I want to find things that are relevant to a query that I have. So that is a principle I keep reminding myself of, right? I can't solve all the problems in the world, right? We'll talk about Castify, maybe I'll show things. So a very specific problem. I watch a lot of videos, lectures, podcasts. I want to turn this into thought leadership pieces that I can share. That's it. That's the happy flow. Everything around it is extra, and I should be very careful on how I add some more sauce on top of it, or cherries or whatnot. So it's a tricky balance because you want to give people more, but I always kind of try to remind myself, hey, don't overdo it.
Has an AI suggestion ever pulled you away from the reality of that business goal you were trying to achieve? Because when we are deep in building, we may mistake ease of execution for strategic alignment.
It depends on the model. Some models are more kind of towards excited about building new stuff and maybe copying from other examples that they've seen and things like that. But what I try to do is a bit like you described in how you're doing custom instructions. So I have files like MD files or text files that are my design principles. So always focus on this, always come back to this principle, right? First principles of building this application. And as I build them and I see recurring mistakes or, as you mentioned it, kind of distractions that the model is going to, I said, okay, now let's add this to the principles because this is something we should always be coming back to. And this is the meta instructions is whenever I start a new session, it starts by reading the principles again.
How different would that be from different skills and all of the other files that you can build for Claude itself?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like if you know tools like Cursor and things like that, it's like rules files. I just call them like design principles. And there is another file about architecture, right? So, for example, because of the speed of development, it's very important to keep things modular and not like have a monolithic application that is, if you want to change something, it's impossible, right? So there's also, I have Claude keep a very detailed modular architecture file that explain, okay, UI components are built in this way and they should be broken down in this approach. We should reuse components, so if we change them in one place, it affects everywhere that it's supposed to impact. And architectural design principles, and here is, again, my experience as a more technical product leader comes in, right? I know some of the mistakes that you can do if you don't do this. So without being an engineer, I was involved in building enough products. Like, I'll just give you like a simple example, right? A lot of these applications today use prompting, right? In the prompt, so you wanted to generate an image, you wanted to translate something from one language to another or whatever, right? So one of the design principles in all my applications is whatever the prompt is, it needs to be separate from the code. So I don't hard code any prompts. So prompts are saved as data entities, and they are called in whenever they are needed. And also as an admin, I have an admin role on the app, I have an admin screen where I can adjust the prompts, and I can even test different versions of them. So the changing of a prompt is not a changing of a code. It's changing of a data entity. And it's much simpler to iterate, to improve. If I just want to change like one sentence, I don't need to touch the code. I just change the actual prompt as a data entity. So that's an example of how I separate components to allow me to build and scale and not break things.
That's a very, very nice, clear structure. You said that you use a hybrid approach, right, for AI and human testing. Could you perhaps share some findings a human tester caught in your app that an AI would never have noticed?
So I think AI, at least today, is good at looking at details, right? And also the technical thing. It's not as good at showing the entire experience. Try to remember an example that Marcin gave me when he did this UX review, and he as well kind of recorded like half an hour of going through the application. And for example, one of the comments that he shared with me, or as he was recording, were around security or privacy. So when you need to join the app, you need to log in, you need to create your application. That's okay. That went to, he kind of had a small comment on that. But then at Castify, once you create an asset, I allow the user to share it on LinkedIn, right? With a click of a button. And when he clicked that button, what I need to do in the application is to connect to his account on LinkedIn because I need to post in his on his behalf. I could see the hesitation when it happened. I said, okay, I don't understand. Why is it asking me for a login to LinkedIn? I don't understand, what does it mean that I give them of the permissions? Like I took it for granted that people will understand. If you want to share LinkedIn, you need to let me to your LinkedIn account. But it became clear for me from like that 1-2 seconds of hesitation that he kind of shared. I need to do a better job at explaining why you need to give the app your LinkedIn applications. How is it not being used by other things? So that's a simple example that I don't think AI would ever think of. It would just think, okay, here's how we build the integration. Okay, but how would people feel about it? That's a human emotion.
I built this app, unfinished app called EchoNote, and it was like for critical or dying people who could leave messages for their loved ones up to 10 years in advance. AI did a great job, but humans think very differently. For me, I focused on the negatives. Would people use this for blackmailing up to 10 years in advance? I thought of all of the evil things that humans can do to humans, and I set 6 AI agent guardrails to ensure that nobody is threatening anybody. I think the way that humans connect with other humans through a book, even when you read a book, you can hear the author's narration, you have a character in mind and all of that. Like that will happen only with humans. With AI you don't get that.
Yeah, empathy.
Empathy, yes, absolutely. So if you had to make a high stake pivot, which one would you trust more? A perfect AI QA report or 1 hour of observing and watching a human work on your app?
I think today you don't need to make that choice, right? So what you should do, you should have that 1 hour. Should record your conversation with like I said, like yesterday when we had this conversation with the startup, the Action Society startup that I was helping. We took the notes, and as we were speaking, like I put on the transcription, voice to text mode on, and I was recording our thinking and talking as we were doing it. And again, human conversations are a bit messy, and it goes in one direction and it comes back. But again, today's LLMs are good at organizing that mess and then helping you move to the next step. Because if I hadn't done that, I would have had to sit down for an hour, process, remember what the notes that I took, maybe and by the way, we threw in another a photo of the whiteboard that we were kind of marking on to give it some more context. And so the next step was so much easier, but also so much more comprehensive, because the LLMs Claude in this case could say, hey, this is the pattern that I'm seeing, this is what I'm thinking of how to solve this, and then we could kind of course correct it, we could refine it. But so definitely don't give up on the humans, but help them express what they really need and push it to the next stage with the help of AI.
Amir, now I'm really, really curious. Can you show us your process of how you built the app? What triggered the idea? what platforms you explored and finally finalized on as well. Which one will you be sharing? Castify, Tempo Hack, or Glory Hack?
We can go with Castify because I think it's the most complete and maybe complex, but it's also, the idea is pretty simple and it's pretty focused. So we can start there with kind of the user experience. By the way, it's work in progress, perpetual work in progress, right? Like many products. So when we record this, maybe in a month's time, there will be some things that are different. And probably will because I already have some things that are being improved following some feedback that I got from users.
That's expected, but that's great choice because from what I've seen, this is your solution to the information density problem. It's an AI tool that transforms complex content into LinkedIn posts, articles, and infographics, as is on the website. Is the perfect example of using AI to bridge the gap between deep research and visual storytelling, especially, I think, also for your newsletter audience.
Correct. So you asked how did I start with this? So I listened to a lot of podcasts, lectures, panel discussions, different topics, often about AI, but not only about AI, technology, politics. And I listen on YouTube, on Spotify, on different platforms, depending, where I am. And it could be on my bicycle. It could be when I'm commuting. It makes me think. And because that's the way I am, but it's also like a bit of my business strategy. I want to share some of the things that I'm thinking about and learning. So that's the original need that I had. I had kind of a workaround way to do it. So what did I used to do? I watched something on YouTube. If I liked it and I wanted to process it, I would copy the link from YouTube, find like a transcription website and paste the link there, copy the transcript into ChatGPT or Claude. I built like a skill or a kind of special instructions on how to turn this raw transcript into something that, like a LinkedIn post that I could share or a newsletter article that I might work on. But as you can imagine, this was kind of a lot of friction there, right? And by the way, I was not able to do any image generation or infographics because that kind of meant even more work and how to create the image prompt for it. So usually if I did not too many of these, or I shared less than I was consuming, and there was so much good things to share. So I said to myself, hey, why don't I try to solve this? Basically, this is what Castify is about. It's turn what you watch into what you're known for, or what you're sharing. This is the core idea. You can add some things around it. So for example, now you can share not just from YouTube, but like from Spotify or Facebook videos, or even TikTok and things like that. Because one user told me I only watch on Spotify, okay, that's still within the key problem that I'm trying to solve. Love things on TED, you love things on this conference that you were at, and you want to share it, but then it takes a lot of effort, right? And by the way, you want it to be, as you said, the AI slop, you want it to be in your voice. You don't want it to be like in a AI generic, here's the thing, or right? I started to build this with Base 44. This is the user interface. So I can go to somewhere here. I can let's look for something AI and human collaboration, right? So I added with time. You see, searching YouTube is something that I added because maybe I don't know exactly what I'm looking for and I want to share faster. Now I also added my own channels. So there's some things here. Okay, human AI collaboration, robotic state of mind, something from a TEDx thing. I could watch this here, right? We're not going to watch this, but basically, okay. And then I say, I'm going to use this video as the source. So now it's transcribing. By the way, another comment that I'm going to fix soon, you don't understand what's happening now. One of the comments that Marcin gave me, hey, you should have like an indication that something is happening because right now, I don't know what's happening, but right now, basically it extracted all the transcript. This is the source. Now, I'll share, as we're going, I'll share a bit of the things that I've learned. Because we can do so many things in AI, I think people need a bit guidance, at least today. So in many of my applications, I decide about the flow and I share the flow with the users. So in this case, there's 3 steps, right? You pasted the link, you choose which content type do you want to create. Then you adjust the style and focus on what is the angle that you wanted to take on this, and then the generation. So I'm very clear with the user. These are the steps that we're going to go through, right? So let's choose an infographic. And this will, I don't know, again, normally I would listen to this thing. I wouldn't just automatically share, but I can imagine this is around like human AI collaboration. Maybe let's take something around myth versus reality, right? In this case. And then, because this is an infographic, by the way, if I would have chosen a LinkedIn post, I would have a different thing, right? I wouldn't have the images, right? I would have only text. But let's go with an infographic, myth versus reality. Now I need to choose what kind of visual it will be. So in this case, I'll go with like pop art. I think it's nice to have like two sides of the thing, myth versus reality. I can choose which language I want this to be generated in. We'll go with English. And then again, something that, where can AI help me? If this is a long video, 30 minutes or even 20 or 1 hour, there's many things that I could talk about in my messaging. But here, AI gives me different angles that I could choose from. So in this case, let's say, illustrate the concept of humans training AI with clear examples or statistics, or the psychological impact of AI on human behavior and interaction, right? And I could manually add some more things. If I really wanted, I could even view the full transcript. And now I'm generating this. And this is now going behind the scenes and doing all the magic, right? Creating the content, analyzing all the transcript, taking in my style, which I can define somewhere else, right? In my profile, I can define my style, my examples, language that I like to use and don't like to use. So everything is now being processed at a high speed. It's also going to generate the prompt for the image. And now basically it's generated the content. And I can already see the post that it's suggesting, right? Myth versus reality in this context of navigating the human AI collaboration dilemma. I can read through it. I can edit it if I want, right? I can kind of change my own, add my own views on it and things. Because this is an image generation, so it's going to take a couple of minutes to generate the infographic. In this case, I'm connected with an API to Google's Nano Banana Pro. We can see like examples from other things that I created with other posts before. And then once it's ready, I can share it on LinkedIn, right? This is something that I created like a couple of hours ago when I watched this video about internal data marketplaces and how to create them and things like that. So that's the flow. And then, of course, here it is. You see? So we got the pop art thingy, AI versus and human behavior, myth versus realities, pop art edition. And then there's like all kinds of things here that I could share about this. So that's the general flow. And I'm thinking of cleaning up even more things here, right? Right now, there's too many things going on in the screen. Also, because I'm admin, you can see some extra things, but still, I want to clean this up even further. So that's the user point of things.
So I'd love to see behind the scenes.
Okay. So can you see the base 44 screen now? Good. So a lot of the things are managed by base 44. Base 44, for those who don't know, it's a vibe coding app that allows you to create all kinds of applications. It takes care of a lot of the heavy lifting, as you put it. I'll just switch to the right workspace. And here I have Castify. And now this is the builder view, if you will. I do have a preview here of the same app, right? So I can see the same things, the pages that I'm building. But here I can converse with the AI chatbot to help me build things like features and change things and add all kinds of things. There's also the admin dashboard. So here, all the data. So one of the things that Base 44 takes care of is all the database. I don't need to connect this to anything. This is, for example, the asset that I just created is here. See, navigating the human AI collaboration dilemma. This is being saved here. The prompts that I mentioned are entities, right? They are saved as entities here in databases and things like that. All the storage of files, like for example, the image that you just saw is saved somewhere by the infrastructure, and the link is saved in the assets. You can manage security here, so decide in which tables can which types of users under which conditions can interact with the data entities. You can set up different agents built into the platform. You can connect this to WhatsApp. You can set up automations so for example, I have automations for messaging people about different features. So I don't need to connect it to any other application in order to build an app from end to end. I have logs here. I can save all kinds of secrets here for my APIs and integrations. Everything is in one place, and then I can publish, right? If I go here, and the good thing is it's also connected to my GitHub, so my private GitHub. So all the code that I can also, by the way, review here is available to me. I can either edit it. If I was a software engineer, I could review it, edit it. I could see different things here, or I could sync it to GitHub. And then for me, I work with Cloud Code, especially as this kind of is becoming a more and more complex application, right? So you see all these backend functions here. I have Stripe integration. I have integration with Google for the images. I have a different service to pull the transcription. So this is becoming more and more complex. This is why now at this level, I'm already co-working with Cloud Code to develop the next big features. If it's a small thing, it's a visual thing, I can do it within here. Like I have also like a visual editing capability here. So I could click this and then I could mark different things and I could say, change the color for this, or, make this the font a bit different or whatever, right? So I can do things within base 44, but for the more complex stuff, at least in this application, I like to now do work with Claude.
Can I ask, why did you decide on base 44?
Several reasons. I kind of followed the founder, Maor Shlomo, when he started it December 24, and interacted on social media. He's Israeli, so I kind of somehow connected. And he created a WhatsApp community, so I joined that WhatsApp community. Very, a few dozen people who started to build, and early on, he was the kind of the cutting edge with this. The way he puts it is like, batteries included. You don't need to take care of anything. You just have an idea. You don't need to think to connect it to any database. There's AI built in. There's image generation built in. There is, now they added like so many other stuff like integrations and analytics built in, and you saw automations built in. So I can focus on solving the problems and not the infrastructure, not the technical details. I can iterate on creating that amazing experience, and everything else is taken care of. So that's one of the first reasons I started with Base 44. And I think also their speed of innovation. So they are very good at listening to customers and users. They have a very active community, and they are very attentive of what should we be building next, and they are shipping like crazy. So these are some of the reasons that I've been building with Base 44. And I'm experimenting with others, but it's also a matter of habit, right? So once you get used to things, unless they start disappointing you or they kind of start to slow down, you would continue with that platform because you already have your patterns, you know how to work with it. You have like reusable components that you can create templates, by the way, you can clone things. So for example, when I build an app, I want a support app. So now I have a template for any new application that I build, which is a support template. So I can like just clone this template and just change this from Castify support to something else support. And this already allows me to have like release notes, documentation, feature requests, bug reports. So I kind of have reusable elements that I can ship much faster.
By building just one.
By building just one and cloning it and thinking about it, especially for someone like me who's thinking, yeah, I can build, I have 50 ideas that I can solve. How do I make this effective? I create reusable, either complete apps or components, or instruction sets or things like that that makes things faster but also more consistent for me.
And how do you connect base 44 with Claude? So how, how do you transition from base 44 to Claude? Sorry.
Yeah. So basically, whenever you create some code, you can publish it, or and it syncs to my GitHub, right? So if I go to my GitHub, let's see if I can find Castify. So this is my code base. It's a private repository, right? So everything is kept here, and then I might need to share a different window. But basically, I will not share it now because it's to save you the time. But basically, Claude is also connected to this repo. So on my local machine, I have a copy of this repo, and I can ask Claude to do things in my local machine. I can run it locally, and it's connected to kind of the base 44 backend, so I can test it locally. And once I'm ready, once I push it to the main branch on the GitHub, it immediately syncs back to base 44. It doesn't publish it to the users.
Right.
I can test it here in the preview, and then I click publish, and then it goes to the end users. So the whole cycle between idea to testing to developing to staging to production is managed through this connection of base 44, GitHub, and Claude.
Looking at these builds, like it's really clear that we can move fast, especially because if you're building on base 44, you have Claude, you're going to be making whatever changes needs to be done, push it to GitHub, shows up in base 44, you can test it out, then publish whenever you're ready. So it's like you can move fast. But what I would like to distinguish between is a technical decision and a momentum decision. So
Hmm.
was there a time where you had to make a choice just to keep building, only to realize that later you'd accidentally locked yourself in a direction you didn't fully probably intend to and had to pivot?
My setup right now, you don't have to have sync to Claude, to GitHub and then Claude. You could actually build everything on base 44, right? There is this chat. I could ask it to build there. I could, possibly even, and you could choose the model there. So I could choose Opus 4.6. I could choose Gemini, or I could choose GPT. For some reason, for me, when I want to have like a bigger picture, a more complex discussion, it's more comfortable to do it in Claude Code, but it's not necessary. If you want to make things even simpler for you, you don't need the GitHub sync, and you don't need to work with Claude Code. This is kind of my own personal preference, especially when the app gets more and more sophisticated, right? So just wanted to clarify that, so if people don't know how to deal with Git or with Claude Code, you don't need to. You can build with this tool just by vibing.
Just by vibing. Was there a time you made a choice to just keep building, like only to realize that later you'd probably accidentally locked yourself into going in a direction that you really didn't fully intend to and had to then pivot?
Yeah, again, it happens every now and again. Now, hopefully less. As I said, I take some time thinking about it. But again, luckily here, you can revert. You can go, I didn't show, but either on base 44 on the Git, right? You can always go back to a different version and retrace your step and said, hey, this is not working. This is not the right. I'll give you, let me start. So right now, you saw the dashboard where the assets are being created, right? And one of the comments that I got from Marcin, who did this kind of UX review, is that the dashboard doesn't really work well, right? It doesn't, or he gave me some. We won't go deeply into the reasons, but that's kind of some of the issues. There were some issues there, and I wanted to test different approaches to revisiting the dashboard, right? And I had some brainstorming sessions with Claude, and I ended up creating 3 different versions of this. And one of them, which is the one that I'm going to show you a peek view of, but basically it's kind of inspired by the Netflix experience. So, the way that you explore content on Netflix. So I wanted to at least test this approach. And by the way, I'd love your input on how this looks. You see, so the regular dashboard is the one that you just saw, right? This one with a list of content. And one of the comments that I got from Martin was, as you have more and more content, it's going to be confusing. Can I organize it in folders? Uh, should it be organized according to the source? All kinds of interesting questions about this very important page, right? So I started to create all kinds of versions of this. And so I called it dashboard 2, and this is organized either by a smart organization. So this is according to sources, but also all kinds of other organizations, or like from before, like a library. But then I wasn't happy with that either. And my recent attempt is to organize it, as I said, like in a Netflix-like experience. So here you have like the hero section where you have the 2 latest things you were working on. So pick up where you left. And then things are organized by the source, right? So I can create multiple things from the same source. And then I can create some more stuff from this source, right? I can, like in Netflix, where you can cut, okay, I just want to see TV series. So I just want to see infographics, or I just want to see articles, right? So quick filtering pills here. And I just want to see ones that are in Swedish, okay? So this is kind of a different way of experiencing the dashboard. And also quickly allowing you to create more content from the same source, right? So now, maybe coming back to your question, the way that I'm doing it now, I'm exploring the different options before I actually commit to one, right? I haven't committed to dashboard 2 or 3. I'm kind of exploring them. I'm testing them. I'm thinking about different ways of building things. And once I'm a bit more certain of this is how I'm going to go, then I'm going to release this to the users and then continue to iterate.
It's very interesting that you can sort through. Do you also have an option for like frequently viewed? Maybe there are some that you're seeing over and over again because it resonates with you, you're trying to build off
Yeah.
that.
So, oh yeah, you can sort this according to the status, the type, right? If it's an infographic, if it's something that it's only a draft or is published, um, if it's so I'm playing around and you can have like a table view. So there's so many options here, and the trick is what would resonate with users, because we know you like watching these types of sources or videos about this topic. Maybe we'll even suggest things that you haven't watched yet and you want to include them, right? So all kinds of ideas that I have around how to improve this flow for the users. This is still the same problem, very focused. I'm just helping them in small different ways to accomplish this achievement.
I think it is very, very nicely done, and thank you for showing entire platform and the backend version as well in as much detail. If I remember correctly, in our initial conversation, you'd mentioned that in today's tools, like even a major refactor is rarely a blocker. So if technology is no longer the bottleneck, what is the real constraint?
I would say there's two. First of all, like we mentioned before, working on the right problems. So, and we talked about it in different ways before, speaking to the users, understanding what's worth solving, what's the competition landscape look like, where will, the capabilities go next so we don't get eaten up by one of the giants and things like that. So how can we build a sustainable solution around a sustainable problem over time? That's one thing. And the other problem, which I think is still not solved, and I haven't solved it well enough yet, is how do we get the people's attention? How do we go to market? How do we grow the usage? And because even if Castify is great and I love it, if I want to scale it, I need thousands of people to use it, right? So how do I get to them? What are the channels? That's kind of a more marketing, sales, conversion, and I'm still experimenting around this, sometimes with AI tools, sometimes with more traditional things. At least if somebody knows how to solve this, have them on the next episode and then I'll listen. But I think these are the two core problems that are still there. They're more difficult to solve than the building part for most cases. I mean, in some cases, building and the technology is still blocker if you're looking like into more cutting edge things, but less and less so. The other thing for people that are not individuals like myself, like I also work with organizations with large teams with thousands of people. I'd say the third piece is how do you reorganize your entire operating model with these condensed changes? How do you define jobs differently? How do you so when things spill over, right? What does the designer do? What does the product person do? What does the engineer do? What does the QA person do? So that's on the individual role level. What is a team now? What do you need in a team in order to move quickly and build safely and responsibly in a sustainable, robust way? And then finally, how does the organization look, right? How do different teams work together? How do AI agents come into teams and go out of teams? How do we keep an organizational memory that both humans and AIs can use? So these are more kind of bigger questions for ones that are thinking about organizational level.
I've coined this term called vibe debt, which is basically decisions made simply because the tool made them way too easy to apply. So, and I think it applies to both individuals and organizations because people think using an AI tool is like solving all of your problems. Any recommendation AI gives is like, this is definitely something we should be considering. So,
Hmm.
in your current portfolio, amongst all of the products you built and the empire you're building, are you worried about building vibe debt? Decision you wish you could go back and would have changed?
So yeah, so this is part of the things that you mentioned my newsletter, right? So the first section of my newsletter is always leadership principles in the age of AI, right? So basically I take Amazon's leadership principles, there's 16 of them. They're kind of try to codify beliefs in how the world works or how do we think about acting in the world, and to make them into things that we can pull and leverage when they're needed. And sometimes they're conflicting, so you have bias for action. That means moving fast and building quickly, but you also have dive deep. So when do you dive deep? When do you have bias for action? When do you have to think big? So think about the bigger picture. So there's like all kinds of these principles that need to guide you. So I just wanted to mention that because these are exactly the type of questions that I try to tackle there. If you have bias for action now and you can move so fast, what happens when you start to collect debt, or when you're maybe not, when you need to step back, right? And it is also coming back to something that I mentioned earlier. We need to realize that things have changed now. If I can run, I just showed like a mini example. I can build 3 types of the same application, right? 3 dashboards. Or I can show the startup that I was working with 5 different versions, and we can pick and choose from that. So we should be rethinking the way that we develop, because it is now cheap. But then we don't need to operate the same way that we did. We can create 100 versions or 10 versions, and then we can discuss, okay, what do we like from these? So we can work in parallel now, even roll out automatically different things to different groups and test with things and collect feedback and automate maybe even some of the things that I mentioned that I do manually, record users talking about this version and this version and this version, and then pick the best of most. So I think it's an opportunity for all of us, in order to not to have like vibe debt in the wrong direction. How can we think about the whole process and keeping our focus on the target? And again, by the way, one of the first leadership principle Amazon is customer obsession. How do we keep ourselves obsessed with the customer? How do we start with the customer and work backwards, which is exactly the innovation methodology that I kind of use all the time.
Do you think that the speed of creation makes us a lot more attached to the ideas than we should be killing faster?
Yeah, I mean, definitely this happens. And one of the things that I'm working about improving myself is letting go. And it is a difficult thing, and even the term throwaway development, right? Throwaway application, throwaway branches. But I think this is something we need to get accustomed to. We are going to create throwaway experiments, if you will. We had this in the past, right? Even in working backwards, when you build something, anything new that you build is built on some assumptions, right? You don't know. Otherwise, it would have been a solved problem. So you don't know how people will react. You don't know what is technically feasible. You don't know what is what will be the unit cost economics, right? So when you have an idea and you have maybe even a prototype, you start with some assumptions. Now, previously, if you wanted to explore these assumptions, you had to choose the ones that you're going to explore. You had to run through a lot of these experiments. It would take time, and then the iteration would begin, right? So even within Amazon, when you would write this first vision, you would create the vision of the first prototype, and then you would design experiments. The thing is that now we can do so many experiments in parallel. We can spin them much faster. We can learn much faster. I think the cycle of making this innovation uh, more accurate, more data driven, more experiment driven, but it does take the switch that say, hey, these are only experiments. And the main thing here is not the thing that we have in the end, but what we've learned. Does it validate the assumption, or were we wrong and we should actually throw this away because this is completely annoying to the customer or doesn't make sense by unit economics or is too complex to manage or whatnot? So that's the mindset that I'm trying to take upon myself, but also convey to others.
16 years in UX, like I am used to throwaway features. So, we used to have a whole backlog in every company that I worked. I worked in consultancy, startups, Fortune 500 companies, Ryanair even. So, we always had a list of new features that we want to improve in the backlog. You build out a freaking business case with the PMs, with the dev teams, with the data analytics teams. You build out a robust business case, get stakeholder alignment, make sure everybody's on board to start building it, and you build a quick and easy and dirty POC. Then you see how it works. If it builds traction, if people engage, if it reaches the goal that you're trying to achieve, fantastic, we go in and we build out the entire end-to-end journey. But if not, screw it, let's go on to the next one. So I can totally relate to everything that you just said. But because of what you just showed me, when founders see your speed, right, they probably immediately want to see your complete tool stack. So I'm very grateful that you showed it to us. You mentioned, leadership principles. So, of all of them, what is the one principle that you stand by that you believe a founder needs more than they need a cloud subscription?
So my favorite leadership principle is learn and be curious, especially when things are keep changing, and maybe a lot of the things that I said are uh, will not make sense in the next 2 months when new things happen. And so learn and be curious, at least for me, that is my motto before I joined Amazon, after I left Amazon. Like, learning, being curious is one of the big things that I would recommend. And there's different ways to learn. There's different ways to be curious. Ask people, the juniors in your team. Ask the customer, which is a bit of an odd customer, which is not the normal regular customer that you would have in your application, and learn from the quirks that how they are using the application. Read books. Whenever I see an application that has an AI feature, even if I have to do a task, okay, let me look at this AI feature. Let me see if I can learn from it. And I don't know, Claude came up with something, ChatGPT came up with something, Microsoft Copilot did this thing. Do I like it? Do I not like it? Do I want to learn from this something? Miro did something, so I'm going to play with this. Okay, I don't like this. I learned something that is not a good user experience in AI, or this one I like. I'm going to pick up on that and I make a note. So learn and be curious, definitely the one. The other thing I would say, and I'm not sure there is a leadership principle, maybe I should write one, which is very relevant for today, is resilience. We need to build resilience because of the disruption, because things are changing so fast and the landscape is shifting, and it's only accelerating because of all the investment, because of the advancement in technology. I think resilience is going to be a very needed ability and needed characteristic in people, and definitely for founders. So be resilient, have this kind of conviction.
Amir, you built several successful apps and a high value newsletter. What's the one internal realization you've had about vibe coding that has nothing to do with the tools and everything to do with your own clarity as a leader?
maybe connecting to what I said about learning and being curious, be open minded. When we're working with these AI tools and these vibe coding tools, we sometimes liken them to humans and how humans work. And I also do that when I do like lectures to executives or to teams. I say, okay, sometimes I use this metaphor, think of it about it as like a junior person that joined your team and you're giving them context and understanding, giving them, explaining the goal and you're prompting them in a certain way, blah, blah, blah. But we do need to understand that these systems, they do work differently, right? Although sometimes they may seem human, right? Or the way that they communicate, and sometimes intentionally, because the people who build them do it for a reason. It's easier for us to communicate. They are not human, and that has both pros and cons. And that goes to the dive deep leadership principle. You should understand what these tools are good at and what they're not good at when you're vibe coding. I'll just give you like a simple example, right? Whenever you open one of the vibe coding tools, it doesn't remember the previous session. I mean, you could kind of recall the previous session, but if you open like a fresh session, it has zero memory. I mean, it knows what it was trained on. Maybe it's connected to some information if you gave it like some general custom instructions, as you said, but it doesn't remember everything that you talked about yesterday. Right? If it was a human, like a software engineer that I would talk to, come on, we talked about this already. We talked about the principles. Why are you hard coding my prompts again? No, because I'm a new person, right? So we should know the limitations. We should also understand the strengths, and we should be basically helping this alien intelligence to be the best it can be as a team member for us, right? So I would say this is a very something that an insight that I've had in recent months working with these tools, that I should be helping them help me.
For the founders listening who are currently feeling the pressure of, too many tools and too much noise, what are your three non-negotiable takeaways for building something that stays flexible instead of hardening into a mistake that could be really costly later?
One of the things that sometimes I get asked, which tool do you recommend? So I'd say it depends on what you're trying to solve and what kind of things do you do commonly, right? So for me, the set of tools that I shared are specific to what I'm trying to do, right? I'm building web applications. I'm doing, I need integrations. And so I picked a certain set of tools. Some people may, for example, have more things around creating creative content, right? Maybe with more imagery. So they would need more, I don't know, Midjourney, or if it's video, it would be Google VO or some other application. So pick a number of tools that are right for your domain and for your goals. Dive deeper into those tools, get familiar with them so you can make the most of their capabilities, and especially when they are kind of all the time there are new versions, new models, new capabilities being introduced. So be an expert on those tools. But at the same time, what I'm trying to do is every now and again learn a new tool or explore a new tool. Why? Because even if you can discard it and not use it this time, you will remember when another use case comes, hey, actually that tool might be relevant. I might want to explore it again. So it's kind of a T-shaped thing. So build kind of that generalistic knowledge of what is possible, and then dive deep into the certain tools that you're using now for the specific use cases.
It makes absolute sense because, like I said, there are way too many tools out there, and it gets very overwhelming because if you're trying to experiment with everything, your mind's going to literally blow
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So it's better to focus on, like you said, your domain, see which one works best for you, and then experiment with a few others which are around the same vicinity of what you want.
And watch podcasts like yourself, like the one that you are doing. So to hey, maybe I should explore this one, or I should do things a bit differently, and I can dive deep in this way. So other episodes like this, learn from others, and pull on the threads that they're kind of offering.
So the whole goal of this podcast was to help people who are feeling overwhelmed learn from others what other founders are using and see if that is something that they would like to implement. What makes this conversation so vital for me was seeing the forensics of your builds. It's one thing to hear about AI speed, it's another to see where the speed hits the wall of trust and technical realities. Amir's journey proves a core principle of the show. In the AI era, technical debt is being replaced by vibe debt, those invisible constraints we build into our companies simply because the tools have made it too easy to say yes to a feature. As Amir showed us, your authority as a founder doesn't come from your output volume. It comes from your ability to recognize when the vibe is leading you towards a permanent path you probably aren't ready to walk yet. In other words, he's reminded us that while AI can build the path, only a human can decide if it's the path worth walking. Amir, for people listening, where can they find you?
So I'd say two things. First of all, LinkedIn. Hopefully, you will see some Castify posts there, and they resonate with you and comment on them, and that's one thing. And the other place is my personal website, amirelion.com. And by the way, also built over 12 hours 2 weeks ago with Cloud Code. So hopefully also resonates. There's some podcast episodes there. I'll put this podcast episode there once it's published. So yeah, LinkedIn or my website and Castify. Use it, share things with me.
Brilliant. Guys, if you want to follow Amir's work or subscribe to the Think Big newsletter to see his workflows in action, I'll have the links in our show notes as well. Before the path hardens, before the choice is made, stopping decision death in the high stakes trade. Thank you for tuning in to the AI Momentum podcast. See you in the next moment of clarity.